Welcome to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome into Soccer Morning, brought to you by World Soccer Talk. Thank you for joining us as always. Big show for you today. Bill Peterson, Commissioner of the North American Soccer League, will join us in 9 minutes or so. We'll preview the 2015 NASL season. We'll talk about the ESPN3 deal that will see all NASL games broadcast live on the internet for your perusal. Perhaps we'll talk about Minnesota United FC. There's lots to talk about with Bill. It's always a good chat. I look forward to him joining us in just a couple of minutes. Perhaps you have thoughts on the USA playing Switzerland today. If I'm not mistaken, we should have a lineup for that game in about an hour. So we will still be on the air when the United States releases their lineup to face Switzerland and hopefully overcome some of these problems that we've seen recently. Some of these problems that Jurgen Klinsmann may or may not be the cause of. It's fascinating. In light of yesterday's discussion with Thomas Rongen, a couple of notable news outlets picked up some comments from Thomas. Comments I kind of breezed by because you know what? They didn't faze me too much. Those comments specifically revolved around Jurgen Klinsmann and his fitness to be the U.S. men's national team head coach. Thomas said perhaps he's not the best fit. Perhaps he doesn't understand the American player quite as well as he needs to. Bruce Arena and Bob Bradley did, of course. Maybe Klinsmann doesn't. A couple of places picked that up. I saw it on my Facebook feed. I'm not a big Facebook guy, but occasionally I'll go over there, see what's going on. And Sports Illustrated's write-up of those comments, which appeared here. That's where they happened, was posted to Facebook. Not by anybody I knew. I guess I'm following Sports Illustrated's soccer page or something. And I took a peek at the comments. Now I know, never read the comments. Never, ever read the comments. Never. I don't normally read comments. I decided to partake of these comments because it was an SI write-up of something that happened here at Soccer Morning. Lots of support for Jurgen Klinsmann. Now, I don't know that that's representative of the larger culture, the larger fan base. I don't know that it's representative of Soccer Morning's fan base. Now, obviously, not all those people that were commenting on this post were aware of what Soccer Morning is. Perhaps most of them have no idea what Soccer Morning is. But lots of support for Jurgen Klinsmann. Lots of deference to Jurgen Klinsmann's resume, which obviously includes a lot of playing success. A couple people jumping in with, hey, great players don't always make good coaches. This is true. Some people saying, hey, perhaps he doesn't quite understand the American player the way he should, as Thomas said, or perhaps it's just not working under Jurgen. But lots of people still backing Jurgen Klinsmann. I find that fascinating. Not because they don't have a right to their opinion. Of course they do. Just the sheer amount of support for Klinsmann. I think the man's got a built-up wall around him that protects him from the most ardent criticism. And I've even seen this thrown out there, and journalists are not the people you want to talk to when it comes to whether or not a coach is saying the right things, doing the right things. Typically, journalists are a little bit more critical. It might be the way to go. Not all of them, but some of them. Some of those journalists pointing out that back in 2011, when Jurgen took the job, one of the things he pointed out was that there's not enough pressure on him or on the team in the United States. The culture is not caught up to that element yet. And now here we are in 2015, and he's questioning whether or not people should be questioning him. My, quite the turn. Before we get to Bill Peterson, a couple of headlines for you on a Tuesday morning. Remember that report that said Xavi was going to sign in Qatar? Apparently Xavi is out there saying, hey, no, I just went on visit. I went to partake of the sights. Nothing more than a visit. It was just a visit, nothing more, just a visit. When I have some news, I'll let you know. This leaves open the door for perhaps New York City FC to get into the Xavi business. And we know Jason Kreis has been out there sort of downplaying the notion that NYCFC would need or want Xavi. And yes, we're all chuckling at that. Okay, Jason Christ, I understand. Maybe you have some formational things to sort out, but you have Xavi now. Trevor Hayward is on. I think he's on Jason Christ's side in this situation. I just can't imagine anybody worth there, any coach with any knowledge of the game, saying no to Xavi. Yeah, you can't really put a DP on the bench, so yeah, you got some things to sort out. I just don't know. So there's that. That window is still open. Not a lot else happening other than a bunch of friendlies. And a €1 qualifier on the schedule today. Actually, before I get to that, a couple of notes, and perhaps we'll ask Bill Peterson about this news. 17-year-old American striker Haji Wright has signed with the New York Cosmos. Bit of a surprise there, if only because A, he came out of the LA Galaxy Academy, and B, he reportedly had European options. But if he didn't have European options or they weren't good enough, this is certainly a coup for the Cosmos. Could be a good fit for Haji Wright. He could get, he's certainly freer to sign for whatever amount of money is offered to him than he might be in MLS. And if he's not going to be a homegrown LA Galaxy player, and Lord knows they're jamming him in over there, and he might not see the field for a very long time, then signing with the Cosmos outside of the MLS draft may be the way to go. Also, in Europe, the European Club Association, there's a big group of really rich clubs, the top clubs in Europe. I don't remember what the roles look like of the European Club Association, but they're pretty deep. They have agreed to a new deal with UEFA that gives them a share of the money from the Euro tournaments in the Euro tournament in 2022. That's a difficult date to say. The ECA agreed to a €209 million deal, $209 million deal 2 weeks ago to share among clubs worldwide for each of the 2018 and 2022 World Cups. So they have a deal with FIFA to share the money there, and they have a deal with UEFA now for $214 million. 214 million euros in 2020. This is all over the map, this piece. I apologize. Those numbers got all mixed up. It's a lot of money, and the European Club Association presumably is going to spread that out. Now, this is the part of the reason they do this is to prevent the European Club Association and its member clubs from suing FIFA when a player goes down injured. We know that that's an issue, club versus country. When a player is injured on international duty, clubs want to recoup some of the money that they pay those players. And this prevents them from doing that. In sad news, the disappearance of a Cal Berkeley soccer player, Eloy Vasquez, has turned into a very sad story. He was found having been hit by a car and killed. This has been trickling around Twitter. I hadn't addressed it until today. I'm very saddened by the news that Eloy Vasquez has turned up dead. Best wishes to his family. Now, when it comes to those friendlies and the one European qualifier, here's your schedule in terms of television. Switzerland and the U.S. at noon on Fox Sports 1. That's a game most of you will be watching, and I'll ask you questions about that later on in the show. Estonia and Iceland, noon on beIN Sport. Russia and Kazakhstan. Russia coming off that terrible situation in Montenegro at 1 p.m. on ESPN3. Ukraine and Latvia, 1:45 on beIN Sports Connect. So that's your online service for beIN Sports. Sweden, Iran, 2:15, beIN Sports Connect. Netherlands and Spain, a big one, on beIN Sports at 2:30, so beIN Sports proper there. Italy and England on ESPN Deportes, RAI International, and ESPN3 at 2:30. This is all Eastern times. Slovakia and Czech Republic, 2:30 p.m. Eastern, ESPN3, watch ESPN. The one European qualifier is Israel and Belgium at 2:45 on Fox Sports 1. Peru, Venezuela, 8 o'clock, beIN Sports. Argentina, Ecuador, beIN Sports, 8 o'clock as well in Spanish. Peru, Venezuela on the English channel. Argentina, Ecuador on the Spanish channel. Mexico and Paraguay, 9 p.m. ESPN2 and Unimas. All right, there we go. That's good. I wanted to get all of that in there in case you wanted to set up your day to watch some soccer. When we come back, Bill Peterson, commissioner of the North American Soccer League. Let's preview his big season. Don't go anywhere. Be right back.
Face in the crowd, you're talking too loud.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we go. Let's talk to Bill Peterson, Commissioner of the North American Soccer League, who is on the phone with me now, just days ahead of the 2015 season openers for his league. Bill, how are you?
I'm fine, Jason. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming back. Big season openers coming up here shortly. I'm looking at the schedule here. We talked to Thomas Rongen of the Tampa Bay Rowdies yesterday. Obviously, they open up in San Antonio. You've got Strikers Cosmos, which is just rich with nostalgia, plus two very good teams. What do you pick out? I mean, I know you can't pick favorites here, but where does your eye drawn?
I think it's across the league in general, and I'm not just saying that, but I've been most impressed the last 2 to 3 months with the reports they get back of where our coaches have been and the scouting they're doing and the signing that they're bringing on. And I won't pretend that I can evaluate the best soccer talent in the world, but I do talk to a lot of our guys, and the reports they give me on other teams other than their own leads me to believe that we've made some serious upgrades to the rosters, and it's going to be an exciting spring season for sure.
Okay, well, let me ask you specifically about one so that you don't have to pick. Jacksonville opening up their season and starting their lives as an NASL team against Edmonton at Everbank Field. What's the expectation there in Jacksonville for the home opener?
Well, from the community, the expectation's high. You've done a great job of establishing that club, and everywhere you go, people are talking about it, or you're seeing something related to that team. And I think they've got high expectations for opening night of being north of 16,000 people for their inaugural game, and maybe it goes further than that. So they've done a great job of establishing it. On the field, obviously, they started off the preseason strong. Preseason doesn't mean anything. They've scrambled around the last couple of matches. I talked to Dario Sala last Friday. I was out watching their team practice, and he thinks they're good, but he doesn't know how good yet. So that's always the beauty of the preseason is never being quite sure of how strong you're going to be. But they have put a lot of effort and resources into being a top team in this league right out of the box, and they're playing to win. And it's going to be an exciting night. I can't wait for the first touch Saturday evening. It's going to be historical.
I sense a theme among the Florida guys with their first year in charge of new teams. Thomas Rongen said the same thing. Don't know how good we are yet, so we'll have plenty of time to find out. And if people want to see just how good the Rowdies and Armada and everybody else are in the NASL, they have the ability to do that via ESPN3. Bill, just tell me give me some nitty gritty here on what this ESPN3 deal means for the NASL. And, if you want to promote where people can go to find all the links to get there, let me know.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it means a lot to us. So it's a continuation of, a small partnership we had last year. We had a game of the week on ESPN3, and, we're in constant contact with them and also some other broadcasters. But they really stepped up and came back to us and said, look, we want to be your broadcaster. We want to put it on free. During the conversations, they came back and said, we want to go international with this. So it's now in a total of 75 countries. And even before we announced the deal, they came back and we're talking about some other things in the future. So it's a developing relationship. They're the worldwide leader in sports for a reason. They've been very good to us. And this broadcast deal, really exposes us to soccer fans around the world. It's going to be easier for fans to follow us this year. There's going to be a lot more promotion associated with it coming out of ESPN and ourselves. But very simply, a person goes to their team's favorite website, and they'll be able to watch the matches there each week.
And as you go forward with this broadcast deal, just for my edification here, is this going to be like local TV feeds that ESPN3 is going to pick up? Are these going to be local broadcasters doing these games?
Yes, so we've made some significant upgrades to our broadcasting capabilities and really raised our minimum standards. We've invested in proprietary trunk lines to carry the signals from our stadiums to ESPN, but they will be the local broadcast that ESPN is picking up.
So there you go. If you're looking out for NASL in 2015, ESPN3 is the place to go. And as you as you peruse the league and ahead of the new season. Now, I know you've been answering a lot of questions about Minnesota United FC recently, Bill, and I'm certainly going to address that. But when you look at the schedule and you consider the number of teams you have, and you and I have talked about expansion in the past, and I've asked specifically about the Virginia team, the Oklahoma City team. Where do things stand right now in terms of adding teams to this league, and how quickly can you guys move on that?
Yeah, well, we'll move when we're ready. That's been our position forever. We're not going to announce expansion teams until everything has been put into place properly and that we're satisfied that we're going to be able to launch and be successful. We're not under any pressure to expand on any timeline. So I know it drives some of the fans crazy, and it drives some of the media crazy that we won't come out and say we're going to add 3 teams by next year, or we're going to make an announcement in 4 weeks. But the fact of the matter is these things are complicated, and a lot of things happen along the way from the time a group approaches you about being in the league until they actually get on the field. And we would just rather focus on our work and get the deals done and get these people in place where they can be successful, like Indy was, like Jacksonville will be, like Ottawa was in the last year or so, and do this right. We have more interest from ownership groups than we've ever had. I mean, it's double digits that we're dealing with right now. Are all those going to come to fruition?
Mm-hmm.
No. Are they serious? Yes. They're all people who have the financial wherewithal. They're all cities that we're interested in. But things will happen along the way. And a lot of times what happens is these guys who have initial interest, once they realize the work that's actually involved to launch a team from scratch and to be successful, they bow out. They're like, you know what, I've got other things I'm doing, or this is just too much. And they go by the wayside. So, again, a lot of things happen during that process. We've never had more interest. We will expand. There's no doubt about that. We're going to get to 18, probably 20 teams in the next 3 to 4 years, somewhere in that time frame. And this is going to be wildly successful. More and more people understand the model. They understand the opportunity. We have teams that are very, very successful, both financially and obviously on the field. And that's attracting interest not only from the United States, but from all over the world. So we're going to just keep, being patient, working through that. We'll announce them when we're ready. And, what I will say definitively is we will be expanding in the near future.
As you said, 18 to 20 teams in the next 2 or 3, or the next 3 to 4 years, or whatever that timeline you gave, that vague timeline, is certainly aggressive growth. And you did say that the league's not in any pressure to expand, but do you mean that there is no pressure to get to the West Coast by a certain point in order to maintain your second division status?
We don't worry about that. We have enough interest in the West Coast, and we're going to get there. And, I don't think U.S. Soccer is going to come back and try to pull our designation or our, take us out of play because we don't have a team in the West Coast. What we've proven is we're capable of building very strong teams, and we're expanding very widely in how we go about all of this. Mm-hmm. And they, I assume, are very proud of the efforts we're putting in. And we'll realize that we'll be on the West Coast when it makes the most sense.
And I'm just, housekeeping here. And again, I know I ask you about Virginia all the time because they're local for me. But are they as far as you see it right now, or is that a dead project? And the same thing goes for Oklahoma City.
Well, I can't say that Virginia's dead because there is a group of owners who are engaged in trying to sort out the infrastructure, the stadium situations that might be available to them. And the word they've given us is that if they can sort that piece out, so short-term, long-term stadium plan, which is one of our prerequisites, then they're ready to move forward with the rest of the process. We know them very well. We speak to them every 2 weeks. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to resolve this issue, which is a big one. If it happens, I would expect a team there. If at some point they raise their hand and say, we've tried everything, it doesn't work, then it goes away. But nothing has really changed other than, they continue to work at this. Oklahoma City is a completely different situation. I'm very optimistic that we're going to have a team in Oklahoma City. It's a matter of when everything gets wrapped up, but there's been a lot of progress there. And, we'll see. I can't predict when we'll be finished, but I really expect we'll have a team there in the near future.
All right, I saw the statement issued by your league, Bill, when Minnesota United FC was introduced as the next MLS expansion team at Target Field last week. I completely understand the position of the league, but at the same time, the problem with losing a group like Bill McGuire's group is that, as you said, sometimes people take a look at this, realize how much work is involved, and then step aside. There you had a committed ownership group that was pushing that team forward, that had done lots of good work, considering some of the issues that club had or various iterations of that club had. What does this mean for the NASL, and what does it mean for that particular market for your league?
Well, look, it's I guess it's unfortunate, but at the same time, we're not sitting around really worried about it. It's where the game is in this country. I mean, think about it. Last Wednesday, that team and those players and that owner were in NASL at 10 o'clock in the morning. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they were in a different league. What changed? They wrote a check. I mean, that's, unfortunately, in my opinion, the state of the game today. It's their choice. It's a free country. We wish them well. But those things are going to happen as long as we continue to be organized the way we're organized. Teams are going to move around, up, down, and around to places they feel are best for them. Minnesota was a unique situation. There was an absolute effort being made to put an MLS team in with the Vikings and play in the Viking Stadium. Our owner felt like he wanted to represent professional soccer in Minnesota. And ultimately, he knows the details. You can talk to him about it, but at some point he made the decision to do that. And there's nothing stopping him from doing that. And so, again, we wish him well, but, we've got our own plan and we'll move on. There's not a league in this country that has started that hasn't had teams move and fold and change ownerships, and we're not going to be any different than any other league that's been here. So it just is what it is. I don't like that term, but it is what it is, and we'll move on. They'll move on, and it'll be part of history.
Well, Bill, I mean, look, I've heard the arguments as you just laid it out there that Dr. McGuire and his group felt like they didn't really have a choice. If the Vikings were going to get a team that was obviously going to cause problems within the Minneapolis-St. Paul market for them as a soccer club, but at the same time, there's a truth to the fact that right now, in order to get, and they don't have a stadium deal done, but they've got some things in place. In order to get a stadium in a downtown location with public help on some level, whether it's infrastructure or otherwise, teams, that's more of an MLS thing than it's been an NASL thing. How do you guys get to the point where cities want to build, even if it's not a 25,000 seat stadium, but something nice, something appropriate for your league that can showcase your product in an environment that's not 45 minutes removed from downtown?
Fill the stadium that you have and become very relevant in the communities, and then things like Indianapolis, Jacksonville, and Fort Lauderdale, among others, or the San Antonio situation come along, and you end up with stadiums. I mean, that team was not filling up the stadium, although it's in blame. But at the same time, they made the choices they needed to make, or they felt they needed to make, and onward they go. What we have to do is continue to grow. Remember, we've only played 4 seasons, so let's not get too far out ahead of ourselves. We're doing pretty well for only playing 4 seasons. We continue to grow at double-digit rates across the board in everything we measure. We got to continue to do that, establish our relevance, establish a competition. And the one thing that I know is changing this country, and that the people who are in power in these cities definitely understand the power of soccer. And they're definitely much more open to cooperating in getting a stadium built. Now, what's also happening is there's some fatigue in certain cities where the taxpayers especially are done funding stadiums for professional organizations. So we have to overcome that. They've been very creative in Indianapolis with a plan there. Everyone's still very confident that it's going to happen, but they've only played 1 season. So they're going to continue to do what they're doing, and the same thing in some of our other cities. And, if you prove your value to the taxpayers, to the fans, to the businesses in the community, you'll end up with those stadiums. But it takes work, and it takes, some success, and we're getting there. But again, after 4 seasons, I'm not too concerned about it. we're well on our way, and maybe beyond where we should be with some of these conversations.
Fair enough. And certainly I think there's an open question as to whether or not the way the structure works right now with, as you said, the Minnesota group cutting a check and moving up a division is best for the game and best for the growth of the game in this country. But at the same time, as you said, it is what it is. And yet we have to wonder at what point does somebody, and I'll lay this at your feet, Bill, as you're the one I'm talking to, at what point does somebody say, okay, well, let's open things up. Let's find a way to interact with a division lower than us, because it's the only way it's going to happen first, in order to promote some sort of idea of movement between divisions. If you're sitting there and you have a goal of 18 to 20 teams in 3 to 4 years, is it necessary that those additional teams come from wholly new creations?
No, it doesn't. And we'd be glad to sit down with anybody that's involved in the game right now and have those conversations. There's some challenges to it today, and some people have rightly identified that there are major steps, if you will, between 3, 2, and 1 as it relates to the finances especially. And so we need to find a way to overcome that. Can it be overcome? Absolutely. Look, there's so many smart people involved in this game, and there's so many people that have been involved for a long time and understand models and what works and what doesn't work.
Sorry, guys, just lost my connection to. That's rampant frustration on my part. I just lost my connection to Bill Peterson for no apparent reason. Let me see if I can pull this up. Trevor, do you want to go to a break here and see if I can get Bill back for just a couple more minutes? Let's do that. Let's go ahead and take a quick break. I apologize. It's a technical issue on my end. It's not Bill. Let me take a break. When I come back, we will talk again to Bill Peterson, hopefully from the NASL.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
All right, so we've got the gremlins out, I think. Bill Peterson is back on the line. Bill, I apologize for the interruption there. We were certainly talking about one of the more interesting things that you regularly address, and it is the movement between divisions. And I, as you said, some of the financial elements of this are what makes it very, very difficult. But you have been consistent in your belief that the conversations need to be happening. But I guess then what we need to get to in terms of a practical idea is how those conversations even begin. Who would you even talk to in order to consider, say, some sort of promotion into NASL?
Well, I think it has to begin with the federation, and they're going to have to support the conversations occurring, because ultimately they're going to have say in how this works. And then, we'd love to talk to the USL guys. We met them a couple of weeks ago. They've gone through some changes, and we told them, anything you want to talk about, we're willing to sit down and have conversations, because it's for the improvement of the sport. And there's a number of issues we should be discussing, whether it's health and safety issues or some other things along those lines that really don't tie into the business or the competitive piece, but are important for our players and our fans, we should be working together on those. And I think that starts with U.S. Soccer, and then hopefully some others would be interested in it.
I was going to say, I was going to say officiating as well. Can you guys get together and everybody talk about officiating a little bit? That might be a good thing for the American soccer fan. All right, so you've got a new season coming up. Another bit of news that I wanted to mention to you, Bill, or bring up and get your thoughts on is the signing of Haji Wright by the New York Cosmos. He's obviously a talented young player. Came out of the LA Galaxy system, a U.S. international at the youth level. What does it say about the NASL and about the Cosmos in particular that Haji Wright decided to sign with them?
Well, I think it's a huge statement on the system that we have in place. I think more and more of the players and more of the agents are starting to understand that we have a totally free market system, free agent system, if you will, in NASL. And here's a gentleman who decided that he wanted to play at a high level, but be part of, what we call the global soccer economy. I don't know the exact term, the length of his term, but he's going to be able to go out in the marketplace as a free agent and test his value sometime in the near future when he's still young enough to make a difference. So he's taking control of his career, and I think you're going to see more and more people make those decisions to come into this league. We're playing at a high level. He's going to be challenged. He's also got an interesting opportunity to work with Raul and Senna. I mean, for a young guy, that's just an incredible experience, but they're expecting him to get on the field and contribute. I expect he'll do that. But the real key here is there's an agent and a player decided to take their destiny in their own hands and control it. And I think we'll see more of that as it goes along. So we're excited to have him in the league. We're excited to watch him develop and contribute, and we've got maybe a decade and a half to follow him in his career, so it's exciting.
Just a couple of things from Twitter. People throwing out questions, Bill. I'm not going to blindside you with anything here, but Vincent Toronto wants to know what the future for the NASL is in Canada, considering that MLS doesn't have plans to expand there anymore.
Yeah, we would like to see at least two more teams up there in the short term. And we've talked about this in the past. We've talked with CSA about working with them to develop even more teams. But just from our perspective, I believe there's at least two more good opportunities up there. I don't think we've done a great job with it the last, I'd say, 9 months. We've sort of had a plan, and we wanted to execute it, and we just haven't done a good job. So I've reached out to our owners in Canada and said, look, let's get the season started. And I want to have a task force of owners and some other people who are influential in Canada, and let's get off of our chairs here and get busy in some of these cities and figure out whether there's a future for us or not. So we'd love to have at least four. We're open to more teams there as needed, if you will. But it's on me. It's on our group here. We need to get busy with it.
In terms of the now, obviously this is about the ownership groups, Bill, and I imagine that you guys aren't out there picking cities. You may have targets, hey, this would be great, but you need that group in place, the people who are solidly behind the league, who are supporting the league, who have the wherewithal and the work ethic to make it happen. But are you conscious of the choices that you're making in terms of markets? I don't know. I mean, again, it's sort of in light of what happened in Minnesota and maybe what's going to happen in Atlanta as well.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we take a look at each market and evaluate each one on similar set of criteria. But again, we always try to make the decision that we think is best for us, not what affects someone else or how someone else affects us. But look, right now we've got 2 or 3 different groups of owners approaching us. One is the person who is in a community, is passionate about his community, passionate about soccer, understands what this could mean to his community, and he wants to own a team. We're starting to get a lot more interest from foreign clubs who understand that participation in NASL allows them to participate in the global player market. They can establish their academies and search for players here that they believe exist and we believe exist, and develop players with their coaches. And the third group are people who are invested in the sport from around the world who are in it for similar reasons. They're looking at, hey, here's an opportunity to get in on professional soccer in the United States in a structure that we recognize. It gives us the ability to develop players and move players, and that's a change from where we were probably 2 years ago for sure, maybe even a year ago. So that's going to drive some of the location issues as well. So if it's a team coming from, let's say, south of the United States, they might be more interested in certain cities than a team coming from Europe or investors coming from Asia or other parts of the world. So it's actually created a little bit of flexibility for us now. Whereas before, if we wanted a club on the West Coast, we were sort of waiting for a West Coast ownership group. Now there might be the opportunity to tie in one of these foreign groups with the locals and get that done even quicker. So the dynamic's changing as more and more people start to realize who we are, what we are, and what their opportunities are.
Does that mean a direct connection, perhaps, to a big foreign club and creating sort of an American outpost? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. I got to ask you in this vein as well: is the NASL playing any role at all, or are you? I'm sure you're closely watching the situation, but do you have anything in particular that's of interest in San Antonio with the potential sale? Is that going to impact the league?
Well, it just depends, I guess, who it's sold to and what their plans are. I mean, we're very open. We would like that club to stay in the NASL and for the new owner to stay in the NASL. And my understanding is that some of the people who are shown interest are interested in staying in the NASL. If it goes a different direction, that's sort of out of our hands. But we're pretty confident that that's a great NASL market. I think if I was buying that club, I'd definitely stay in this league for some period of time. I don't know what that is. I would stay forever, but somebody might want to take a look at it. So anytime you're going through a process like this, you can't predict what's going to happen, but everyone knows our position, and we feel pretty strongly that we're hopeful anyway. Maybe I should say that we're hopeful that it'll stay with us.
You have your season opening up on Saturday, Bill. We've already talked about this before we were so rudely cut off by Skype. You've got a full slate of games here. I did ask you if you had any particular place you were looking. Now, the whole league as a whole, obviously, is your concern here. Beyond Jacksonville opening up, and again, this is your fourth year, right? Is that what that is correct, right?
No, it's only my third.
Well, okay, your third, but the league's fourth. That's what I meant to say. Apologies. The NASL's the league's fifth. Excuse me, league's fifth year. And you got you got teams that have been established for a while. Brand new team in Jacksonville. You get the legacy of some of these NASL names. I guess in terms of a coherent direction, are you guys involved in sort of aiming the how much nostalgia can you actually lean on? How much of this is going to be new? How much of this is going to be? I mean, there's still opportunities out there to sort of trade on the past, but that may not always be the best way to go.
That's right, and so we really leave it up to the individual owners, and we feel like we have a position either way. So if there was a team in the city that we're looking at expanding, then we encourage everybody to dig in and figure out, does that have value or not? And the value is not so much it's going to attract fans. I mean, that was a long time ago for sure. But I think the real value is reestablishing the fact that this league existed and was successful up to a certain point, and played a role in the development of U.S. soccer. Maybe it's just me personally, but I like the historical aspects of it, and some of the names were really cool and I think do have value. But if a group looks at it and says, that doesn't fit into our personality, or we feel too much time has passed, then by all means move forward. And we'll continue to sort of honor that past and bring it along with us. But at the same time, it doesn't dictate any decisions we're making going forward. We're happy to have clubs bring those names back, but if they don't want to, that's fine.
So do you guys have copyright claims on some of these old names? I mean, if somebody wanted to do that?
Yeah, we do. We're about to introduce a licensing deal with a company that's going to bring a few of them back as well. Sweet. And do some retro clothing and stuff like that. We're excited about that. We're going to do some more on our own sites with some of that as well.
Excellent. I think that's big news for a lot of people out there who fondly remember the NASL, or even some of the younger crowd who want to go back and again, grab some of that nostalgia. Bill, again, big weekend coming up. Where will you be? Are you going to be partaking of a game in person, or are you going to be at home watching on ESPN3?
No, I'll go out. I go out about every other week, or at least twice a month. And, I enjoy being out there and talking to our people in the clubs, the fans, and experiencing it myself. And obviously with Jacksonville's inaugural game, I'll find myself there this Saturday night, and then Indianapolis the following week. But I'm like a kid in a candy store. I don't think I've slept through the night for 2 weeks. I'm so excited. I just think it's going to be a very competitive year. It's going to come down to the wire again. And our teams are going to play some great soccer, and that's what this is all about.
There you go. Bill Peterson, commissioner of the North American Soccer League, kind enough to join us again to talk about the 2015 season and some of the things swirling around NASL. Bill, thank you for your time and your candor. I appreciate it as always.
Thanks, Jason, for having me on, Angel. Always enjoy it. Have a great day.
There you go. Bill's gone for appropriately this time. We actually are ending the interview. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll open up the phone lines 347-756-6276. We can talk NASL, talk about everything that was included in there, and the U.S. men's national team playing in about an hour and a half. Don't go anywhere. Be right back.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we go, back on Soccer Morning with the phone lines wide open. 347-756-6276. You want to unpack some of the comments from Bill Peterson of the NASL in relation to their relationship with MLS, their intentions to consider promotion relegation, their expansion plan, the league season coming up, the debut of the Jacksonville Armada. That's going to be a success for NASL. At least it looks like it will be on the surface at the beginning. Take calls on that. As I said, the United States and Switzerland playing in about an hour and a half. If I have that right. I think we should get a U.S. men's national team lineup here shortly, which we can certainly discuss. Or whatever else is on your mind. It doesn't matter. It's what we are wide open. Now we are going to, I forgot to mention this, Trevor. We are going to start screening calls next week. Did we want people to be surprised by that? Was that supposed to be? You did announce that on Twitter, Trevor. But apparently we're going to start screening. Now this is more for organizational purposes. That way we'll be able to get you lined up. I think you'll be able to actually hear the show while you're on hold, which we never had the capability of doing before. I won't be identifying people by their area codes anymore. That'll be something that'll go away. 2 full years of identifying callers by the area code. Should we pour some out for that? I don't know if we should. All right, so we've got the U.S. and Switzerland today, and I think this is where we turn now. Not just the problem with Jurgen Klinsmann's tenure as U.S. men's national team head coach in a lot of ways is that the focus has tended to be on him. The focus has tended to be on his program, his philosophy, his kumbaya stuff, we got to work harder, his intent that's not followed through on. when we should be also talking about the players and the makeup of the player pool and the lineups that he puts out. We talk about the lineups, but then we put that back on Klinsmann. Because what does he do? He throws guys out there in positions that they don't typically play, asks them to do jobs that they don't typically do, and occasionally they fail at those jobs. Then we blame Jurgen Klinsmann for putting him in that position. I think that's the fairer way to go. But then you have to ask, does the United States have the players necessary to get the job done? Do they have the players necessary to play in any type of style that is divergent from what they've done in the past? We spent a decade and a half, longer than that, but let's just go with a decade and a half, sitting in defensive numbers and countering. I mean, that's a simple way to say it. It's obviously much more complicated than that, tactically speaking. And we should give full credit to Bruce Arena and Bob Bradley for making those teams effective, doing something that people tend to look down their noses on now. Or at least they did 5 years ago. Things have changed, certainly changed a bit. Tiki-taka isn't out, but neither is it quite as in as it used to be. And we can all dream of a day that the United States plays like Germany. Germany has some amazing soccer players. The United States doesn't have those soccer players. That makes it difficult for Klinsmann to put out a team that can possibly even come close to playing the way, say, Germany does. In the United States, should the United States, and this is a question I've asked several times, especially since Jurgen Klinsmann has been in charge, should the United States identify a style that is more appropriate to the type of player that they have now and stick to that style because it probably brings more success? Or should we go through this difficult process of trying to overhaul what the American soccer style is? Vince in Toronto, what's up?
Hey, Jason, how's it going?
It's good. You're on this show twice today. I mean, I already name checked you once.
Let's hope I can continue calling it in the future.
Okay, what's going on?
Before I get to what I want to talk about, I do understand what the U.S. thinks of Klinsmann, because I do think the real worry is that at the end of everything, 2018 comes and the U.S. Hasn't changed at all. You got some nice dual nationals on your team, but that promise that Klinsmann, the promise of changing the entire philosophy just doesn't come. And then, you feel like you've wasted 2 cycles of just a guy saying, basically blowing smoke up your ass. That's the brutal way to put it.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And again, there's 2 different notions here. Obviously, Sunil Gulati is in the camp that we needed to change something. The United States needed to change something, that we needed to have a different mentality about how we go about the game. And that in order to bring about that change, Jurgen Klinsmann needed to come in. Somebody did, but Jurgen Klinsmann happened to be his guy. I don't know that there isn't, if people really thought about it, if we couldn't come to some sort of peace over the notion of just being a counterattacking team. That doesn't mean that you're not producing good players. It doesn't mean that you're not playing good soccer. You're just playing a soccer that is not as in vogue, maybe, or not technically as aesthetically as pleasing. Why is it necessary for the United States to turn into a country? Is the ceiling higher? Is that what we're going to say here? The ceiling is higher. Is that the way to go?
Maybe. I mean, perhaps Klinsmann simply believes counterattacking. You can only succeed so much with counterattacking football. And, that's basically it. He doesn't believe that he can take the U.S. to where it needs to go by playing that style. Is that true or not? Maybe.
But I guess, Vince, the other question here is why are the idea of becoming a better possession team or a better team on the ball, a better technical country, a country of better technical players, why is that mutually exclusive from playing the style that Americans have traditionally been most successful with?
I wish I had an answer for you, Jason, but honestly, I don't know, and I don't know what to think of Klinsmann and whatever he's doing.
By the way,
at this point, everybody just wait and see what happens. But we've been waiting to see what happens for 2-3 years now, right?
Yeah. Should I? But full congratulations to Canadian national team winning back-to-back games, right? Benito Floro's got it going. All right, Puerto Rico 3-0.
So you could say, Jason, that we just beat the U.S.
Could you say that for real? I don't know.
No, but yeah, it's definitely a step in the right direction. Kyle Laring getting his first professional goal, and hopefully he'll be able to translate that with Orlando City. But overall, 3 goals from open play. We haven't scored from open play in God knows how long. So that's a big plus, Jason. I just want to get quickly to the NASL talk. I always find it interesting that in this part of the world we're fans of leagues. You don't get that in Europe. You don't see people saying, "Oh, I only watch the 2 Bundesliga," or Ligue 2 is my league of choice. But here you have MLS fans, you have NASL fans. Instead of I'm a fan of the Jacksonville Armada or I'm a fan of Real Salt Lake. It's just weird when you think about it how these leagues, while supposed to be existing under this pyramid, are almost pitted against each other over, soccer viewership in this country, while that's not really an part of the world.
I agree with it's an odd situation. I don't think it's healthy in the long term, and it's been that way for 100 years. I mean, the United States has gone through league after league after league because whenever one popped up to have any sort of decent success, another one popped up to directly compete with it, and they've cannibalized each other, and they've gotten into fights over their sanctioning. They've gotten into fights over stadiums and ownership and players, and it's never worked out. And I hope, and that's it's not that I have a particular. It's not that I have a particular dog in the fight. I'm not backing MLS versus NASL. I'm not backing NASL versus MLS. Mostly it comes down to this philosophy that the 2 leagues espouse in terms of financial restraint and a more open model, et cetera, et cetera. I just want them to get along so we don't end up with a bunch of clubs who are falling apart, disappearing, and then a league that goes down. I don't want NASL to go down. I want the NASL to continue to grow and be successful. But I do see some problems in the way that these 2 leagues are going at each other, maybe not directly, but certainly indirectly. And now, as I said last week over Minnesota United's announcement, we get a sort of passive-aggressive war of words, which, again, doesn't serve anybody any good.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm starting to think that if the NASL does indeed, God forbid, collapse onto itself because of what's happening. And I don't think it'll happen, but I usually see Bill Peterson packing his bags and moving the NASL to Canada because we are willing here to talk with the NASL more than perhaps cities in the U.S. are willing to talk with the NASL. And he's already brought it up that he wants to put more teams in Canada.
Well,
and it's there's a lot more that has to happen first. But if I'm Bill Peterson and if I'm the NASL and I'm seeing a lot of resistance coming from the West Coast, as we've seen the issues there, or giving a franchise to a team who then in 2 years will flip you and say, yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity, but we're taking our talents to MLS. While right to the north of him, he has a whole country that's dying for professional soccer.
Sure.
It's the choices change. And so it's disappointing to see because I want soccer and CONCACAF to be as healthy as can be to see this happening between leagues.
Well,
but we'll see what happens, Jason.
Look, I mean, whether you like MLS and the way it operates or not, it did start in 1996. It does have a 16-year head start on this version of the NASL. They are established in the bigger markets of the country. And NASL, with their approach, rather than sort of saying, well, we can find a nice, strong second division niche here with places like Oklahoma City, with places like maybe not Jacksonville. It's an NFL town. It's got a sizable footprint. But some of these other places, Raleigh, instead of deciding to just slot themselves into that place, they started to try to butt up against MLS. And even then, I don't blame them for Minnesota United FC. That's not the NASL's fault. That's the fact that the fact of the matter is MLS is still the big leagues and is going to be the big leagues for the foreseeable future, which is why I wonder where NASL should look. And you mentioned Canada, and that's fine. That's great. They do have to maintain a certain number of American teams percentage-wise in order to keep their sanctioning. And for whatever Bill says about not worrying about the West Coast and U.S. Soccer pulling their sanctioning, they probably don't want to add too much to the list of problems.
No, absolutely. Jason, I'll leave you with this. I know what you mean about the USF and the requirements of American teams. I'm saying if this Women's World Cup is a big success and those sponsors start to come in droves, which I hope happens to the CSA. That Canadian division that was talked about, many months ago, that starts to look like more and more of a possibility. And if I'm the NASL, and traffic for that matter, I definitely want to get involved with that, especially with this resistance at home that the NASL is currently going through.
Yep. Vincent Toronto, appreciate the phone call, man. Thanks a lot.
Take care, Jason.
There's Vince. 347-756-6276. This being a solo interview program, probably wrap it up in just a few minutes. If you want to jump in, now's your chance. If you want to talk about the USA-Switzerland game, maybe I should wait for that lineup if that's coming out. The game's, I think the kickoff is 12:08, so I'm not sure that we're going to make it to 1 hour before kickoff. But if they release the lineup now, in the next couple of minutes, then certainly we can begin to look at it and see what Jurgen Klinsmann's trying to do. Again, coming back to that problem. And I say it's a problem because, these are friendlies and ultimately they don't matter. But you at least want to see some sort of step-by-step progress. It's never going to be obvious. You're never going to take a bunch of games and go, well, look, they did this thing in this game, and then they got a little bit better in this game, and they took another third step. No, it's not going to be like that. Just as the growth of American soccer, NASL, MLS, whatever, is not going to be a straight line. It's going to have plateaus. It's going to have a couple of dips. The same goes for the U.S. men's national team on any sort of timeline, whether it's a timeline between the beginning of the year and the Gold Cup, whether it's a 4-year timeline for Jurgen Klinsmann, whether it's a 20-year timeline for the health of the program and the improvement of the program. That applies to the quality of the product on the field as a team, the quality of the individual players, the technical ability of the individual players, the coaching ability, the coaching that's throughout the system. This is why every single time there's any sort of success in a moderately sized country or a country with limited resources when compared to the U.S., and this is the argument I always get when we sort of put the American team in context. Well, Klinsmann just doesn't have the talent. Really, he doesn't have good enough players. So we should cut him some slack. What do you expect him to do? How do you expect him to win? The first argument is, there's millions of players here. Yeah, there are. But you can't account for the coaching at every level. You can't account for the competition at every level that these kids are getting. It's not just a numbers game. You have to apply correct pressure to those numbers in order to spit out enough professional players to make yourself a quality national team. And I do think that as a whole, American soccer fans are a little spoiled by what was accomplished at the beginning of the century. And I'm not going to call it, I made this argument before, but I'm not, and maybe I'll change my terminology here. But I've called it a golden generation. And I don't mean that in, they should go win World Cups or, they should go win, to the semifinals, whatever. The United States came within a hair of the semifinals with a group of players who were focused, were a team, were established as a group with a couple of young players, young, exciting players thrown in. Some of the most talented players the United States has ever produced. We're tossed into that 2002 team. DeMarcus Beasley, Landon Donovan. But you consider the group that was really the core of that team. Claudio Reyna, John O'Brien, Brian McBride, Eddie Pope, Tony Santa. These guys, that was it. That was it for them. That was their ends. That was where they were supposed to be in that team, fighting for the U.S. And I'm not going to, Thomas Rongan mentioned yesterday something about the dual internationals. And I really want to focus on that because if you're good enough and you're a citizen, you play. But on some level, whether it's the dual internationals or the Americans who are just American, you wonder about whether that singular focus exists anymore. And maybe it helped the United States be a better team in 2002 than they really had any right to be. 7:04, you're on the air.
Hey, Jason, it's Cam. Great show. How are you?
What's going on, Cam? I'm waxing poetic about the national team. It's bad.
Well, partner, I just want to say great show. Thank you for having Bill Peterson on and talking about NASL. I just want to comment on the U.S. national team because I heard the Thomas Rongen interview on yesterday, and I thought it blew my mind when I heard him say that he didn't think Jurgen Klinsmann was the right fit for the national team for this cycle. To hear a coach of his stature with his history on U.S. soccer blew my mind.
Well, and real quick, Cam, I just want to provide some context because it was pointed out to me on Twitter, and I knew this already, but I mean, it was brought to the forefront when some of his comments ended up on the wire in a couple places. Thomas Rongen, he left the program just as Jurgen Klinsmann was coming in. I'm not sure that I don't know what their relationship is. I don't know that they have one necessarily, but just consider that. I'm not saying that there's anything untoward on the part of Thomas Rongen, but you should consider Rongen's position within that program before Klinsmann and after Klinsmann.
Sure, and I took that in consideration, but I think professionally, to hear a coach of his stature and to make that comment, I think it says something. And as a viewer and a fan of U.S. soccer, the fact that the team doesn't truly have an identity at this stage of the game, as a viewer and a fan, that tells me something. I can't think of under a Bruce Arena team or even Bob Bradley's team. I never questioned, did the team have an identity?
Right.
And to me, I mean, that says something. Doesn't it say something to you?
I think it does. I think it does. I think that, but again, I think that where I get to is coming up once again up to that fork in the road. That is, okay. Do I want to be content with what the Americans have been and just try to maximize that because, hey, it did get us to the quarterfinals of a World Cup. It did get us to a Confederations Cup final. It has won us many a Gold Cup. Or do I want to go down that other fork that says you really need to sort of blow things up a little bit in order to reconstitute them into a team that plays a different sort of soccer that may have a higher ceiling when it comes to ultimate success?
And I think that's an excellent point. But you made a point on yesterday that I thought was very insightful as well on yesterday when you said, you and I talked about this before, the U.S. national team pool has never been deeper. I've never seen so many young, talented kids playing soccer that are technically better than the teams of 2002, Bruce Arena teams, or, even the Bob Bradley teams. But the difference is that where's the next Landon Donovan? And I question, is the coaching really better? Is Richie Williams, the Tab Ramos teams, when I watch U17s, are those teams better coached than when Bruce Arena was heading up the program and implementing at the very beginning a lot of the same philosophies that you see Jurgen Klinsmann, who's a better cheerleader, advocating for?
Those are difficult questions, Cam. Those are really, really tough questions because of sort of not having enough information to really go down that road. I mean, you should consider, and again, this is part of the transition that the United States is going through as a soccer nation that has an impact on the national team, and it's a transition from, okay, we've got a bunch of kids here, they've got some talent, they really have nowhere to go to maximize that talent. Let's create Bradenton. And we'll have an academy. We'll bring in a bunch of kids every year, and there'll be a class, and they'll be in residency, and we'll get them daily coaching and daily training, and we'll get them competitive matches, and that's the way we maximize our talent. To what we've got now, which is not even 20 years later, and it's sort of, well, now we are being mined by all of these other clubs, whether it's like MLS academies, foreign clubs, Mexican clubs. And our most talented kids aren't really in the residency program like they used to be. I mean, first of all, when you're at U17 level, you're talking about 1,000 kids who are probably good enough to shoot up for the national team, and it's difficult to identify who's the best of the bunch. So you've got all of these guys spread out now, rather than sort of focusing on that one. And I'm not saying Bradenton was a success. It obviously produced one really good class. But sure. I'm just saying that in terms of the transition, the process of growing up as a soccer nation, now we have to consider that these guys are getting most of their instruction outside of the U.S. system.
Right, as they should. In the rest of the world, club teams develop players, not national teams. And the U.S., for the first time, at least in the 25 years that I've been watching U.S. soccer, I see more club teams investing in youth development than I've ever seen in my life of watching U.S. soccer. And although I thought Bradenton was perfect for the time in which the evolution and maturity of the U.S. soccer community and program was perfect for when it was needed. Now you see more foreign scouts coming to the U.S. You see more, thanks to MLS, greater investment at the club level, U.S. clubs investing in youth development. And on the one level, you can say there are more people scouting than ever before. But the difference that I see is there are more U.S. players, American players failing in Europe or being mediocre or struggling. Freddie Adu's failure is more of a reflection on coaching as well as on the individual.
He's such
I'll
an
never
outlier.
forget when Landon Donovan at his retirement talked about the mental and psychological side of his development.
Sure. And look, Landon had issues at 17 going to Germany. Freddie is an outlier. Kim, I got to go because I'm going to talk about this U.S. national team lineup. But Freddie Adu is a complete outlier. He is 14-year-old kids being crowned the king of American soccer and put into a fully senior professional team should not happen. I'm sorry, it just should not happen. Maybe if he was 17. But they didn't have anywhere to stash him back then. So they signed him up for his $500,000 contract, gave him his Sierra Mist commercials, and threw him out there for DC United, or threw him into the roster for DC United. And then you obviously had Peter Novak not playing him. The U.S. men's national team lineup for this game against Switzerland today. It kicks off at 12:10 Eastern time on Fox Sports 1. Nick Raimondo in goal. Timmy Chandler right back. Michael Orozco and John Brooks in the middle. Breck Shea on the left. Alejandro Bedoya, Danny Williams, Michael Bradley, and Alfredo Morales in the midfield. Jassy Zardes and Josie Altidore up top. So it looks like a 4-4-2. We'll see how this goes. It's a pretty sensible lineup. The Morales inclusion is a little interesting for me, but that does give Klinsmann some here we go. This is from SI Soccer. Breck Shea at left back. Jassy Zardes starting at forward, not wide midfield. That's definitely what I saw there. And Danny Williams in center mid. Yes. So Alfredo Morales on the right is a little interesting. Other than that, I'm okay with that lineup. There you go. Anything else that we should talk about today? You gotta go right now. 347-756-6276. You got about 2 minutes before I wrap this episode up. Partly because I need to get home so I can watch the U.S. play Switzerland. Because I'm gonna go and put myself through that pain today. Hopefully they'll be able to hang on if they can get a lead. They got to get a lead first. Well, they can hang on for the last 10 minutes or so of the game. Because I'd like to see some sort of success. A draw would be nice. Can we get a draw? Maybe. Is Klinsmann making progress? Gold Cup going to go well? How do you guys feel about the national team right now? All right. No calls coming in, so I think I'm going to wrap this up. Again, thank you very much to Bill Peterson, the North American Soccer League commissioner, for joining us to talk about his season and his league. Make sure you check out the games on ESPN3 this weekend. Some excellent tilts on the schedule, including Strikers, Cosmos, for you nostalgia freaks out there. Go to backheel.com/store to buy yourself a Soccer Morning coffee mug. It's great. Makes coffee taste great. It's got magical properties. See? Go to 30fc.com to buy yourself a Soccer Morning t-shirt. I think that's it. I think we'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the program. Something good will happen. We'll talk about the USA game, whatever happens today against Switzerland. Thanks to those of you who called in and tweeted, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.